Today we are going to read My Dad's a Birdman by David Elmond. We're going to start off on chapter 5 where we left off last time. Chapter 5. Dad ran around the room. He flapped his arms, he tweeted and cooed and squeaked and squawked. Lizzie reached out at him as he dashed past. She called to him, but he didn't see her, didn't hear her. She watched him from the corner of the room. "I'm in the air," he yelled. "My feet are off the ground. They are." He giggled at himself. "No, they're not." "You nitty nutter," he said, "but there will be. A bit more practice, a few more hours, a few more days. Whee!" He strutted to a halt. He bent forward and panted and puffed. He inspected his wings. He fiddled with the feathers and the strings and the clips and the pins. Yes, they were far from perfect. Yes, they needed some adjustments. A little twist here, a little tweak there. But to his eyes, they were magic. They were better than propellers or parachutes, better than catapults or pong or pogo sticks. Wings were the things that would carry him up like a bird into the air. The things that bring victory to him, to Jackie, Crow of 12 Lark Lane. He hugged himself as he daydreamed of a competition day. He saw the others splashing in the river, yelling to help while he flapped high above. And he saw Lizzie down there on the riverbank looking up at him and waving and yelling out to anyone who'd listen. "That's my dad up there. That's my Jackie Crow. My dad's a birdsman. He's the greatest. He's the greatest birdman and the greatest dad that's ever been." He laughed and picked up a beetle from the floor. Lizzie gagged as he flicked it into his mouth. "Yum, yum," he said. He shoved the breakfast thing off the table, then quickly climbed up onto it. "Dad, no!" shouted Lizzie. "1," he said. "2." "Dad, no!" yelled Lizzie, and she leapt to save him, but too late. "3," he yelled. "Blast off!" And he jumped towards the ceiling and crashed down to the floor. "Ow!" he cried. "Ouch, my back! Ah, my knee! Ow, my head!" "Dad, man," said Lizzie, "you'll kill yourself." He giggled through his pain. "I nearly did it, Lizzie. I was nearly away. I was nearly away that time. Did you see us?" "My feet were." He stopped. He goggled at her. What are you doing here, lass?" She put her arm under his wings and helped him to sit up. "I'm here because I was worried about you," she said. "And I was right. You could break your back, man." "Break me back? Don't be daft." He waggled his shoulders. "Do you like me wings, Lizzie? I've been keeping them a secret. They were going to be a big surprise for you." She touched them, sniffed them. "Hey," she said, "I suppose they're lovely, Dad, but there's no supposing about it. These wings is going to make us famous and rich." "But Dad..." "Anyway, you're supposed to be at school. What about your sums and your spellings? What's Mr. Mint going to say?" Lizzie didn't know what Mr. Mint would say, but she knew he'd be concerned. She knew he'd want to find out what was going on. "Mr. Mint's a nice man," she said. "He understands that sometimes I need to stay at home." She went on inspecting the wings. She looked at the way the string and the feathers and the wires were so carefully woven together. She touched a single feather with her fingertip. It was so smooth, so beautifully formed. She touched another, deep and shining black. "Is this a blackbird's?" she said. "Hey, Lizzie, it is." He took off the wings. They rustled as he lifted them, like trees, like living things. He pointed to other feathers. He showed her a pigeon's feather, and one from a thrush, and one from a magpie. He showed her how big a crow feather is, and how strong seagull feathers are. On his shoulder the tiny delicate feather of a linnet, and the sweetly coloured feather of a chiffchaff, and a beautiful feather from sweet little Jenny Wren. And Lizzie smiled as he showed her, and she sighed with him at the beauty of the feathers and the wings. Her dad had always been clever with his hands. He'd always been able to make things, like the doll's house he made for her 5th birthday, the puppets, and the puppet theatre he'd made that Christmas when she was 6, and the swing in the garden, and the little playhouse that was like a cottage from a fairy tale, and homemade books and dolls. And these wings were something new, something strange, something wonderful. "They're lovely, Dad," she whispered. "They're from the garden," said Dad. "It's amazing what you can find lying under the trees. Dropped feathers everywhere." "You're so clever," said Lizzie, but she shook her head. "But you're silly as well, Dad. A man can't fly just by putting feathers on." "Yes, he can," Dad replied. "It's a matter of getting the jumping and the flapping right. Believe in it, and off you go." Then he sighed. "There's just one problem, though." "What's that?" said Lizzie. In answer, he got hold of his tummy. He wobbled it. She smiled. He'd always been a bit plump ever since she could remember. "This is the problem," he said. "Look at this belly." "Lizzie, I'm too blooming fat. That's what's holding me back. Did you ever see a fat bird? Did you ever see a wobbly bird?" Lizzie thought about it. There were those big fat Christmas turkeys that could hardly walk, never mind fly, but they weren't supposed to fly. They were supposed to waddle around eating rich food for a few months, then end up stuffed on a Christmas table. And there were those poor dumpy chickens in those tiny cages, and Dad saw what she was thinking. "Did you ever see a wobbly bird that could fly?" She shook her head. "Course you didn't," said Dad. "And why is that?" "It's because of what they eat." He picked up a tiny beetle from the floor and flicked it into his mouth. Lizzie yelped. "Ugh." "They eat bugs, flies, berries and seeds and worms," said Dad. "They do not eat rich food. They do not eat toast, and they definitely positively do not eat Aunt Doreen's dinners." He ate another bug. He went tweet, 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 tweet. A bird whistled from outside. "See," he said, "it's working." He went caw, 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 just like a crow, and a crow cawked back from outside. "See," he said, "I'll be a real proper birdman. It's all for you, lass. You'll be so proud of us." "But Dad," she said softly, and she held him gently by the arm. "I don't need you to be a birdman. I just need you to be my dad." Dad paused. He looked into Lizzie's eyes. "Really?" he said, as if the thought had never crossed his mind. And Lizzie started to speak again, but a voice from outside interrupted her. "Jackie? Jackie?" Dad flinched. "Oh no," he said. "She's here already." He jumped up and cawed like a crow. He ran out into the garden. There was no stopping him. "Hello, little wormies," he cried. Chapter 6. Auntie Doreen burst into the room. She wore a green pinny with red flowers on it. She pulled off a yellow hat. She stamped on the floor with her shiny blue boots. She put a big tartan shopping bag on the table. "Elizabeth," she said, "have you seen that big daft man out there?" "What big daft man?" asked Lizzie. "There's just one big daft man around here, and it's not me, it's not you." It'll be about that daft competition, isn't it?" "Yes, Auntie Doreen." Auntie Doreen rolled her eyes. "A human bird indeed," she said. "The whole town's going crackers. People should stick to being people, that's my opinion. Don't you agree, Elizabeth?" "Yes, Auntie Doreen." "They should keep their feet on God's good earth. Don't you agree, Elizabeth?" "Yes, Auntie Doreen." "Of course you do." Auntie Doreen waddled around the room, flapping her arms and squawking like a bird, and reaching for the sky to show how stupid it was all. See, she said, absolutely no chance whatsoever at all. Birds is birds and human beings is human beings. And I hope they've been teaching you that at... She stopped. She stared at Lizzie. Why aren't you at school, me lass? Lizzie lowered her eyes. What on earth could she say? I'm not well, she said at last. You look well enough to me, said Auntie Doreen. What's wrong with you? I've got a bad leg, said Lizzie. No, a bad head? I mean, a bad belly. She leaned forward and clenched her tummy. Ooh, she groaned. Bad belly. Ow. Auntie Doreen pursed her lips and narrowed her eyes and believed none of it. Bad belly indeed, she said. Good home cooking is what you need, and it's what that big daft man needs and all. Things is going to wreck and ruin it. Things is going to rack and ruin here. What's 2 + 2, eh? Said Lizzie. Don't you mean pardon? Pardon, said Lizzie. What's 2 + 2? I need to see how far you're slipping behind. 4. Auntie Doreen counted up with her fingers. Correct, she said. At least something's going right. Ever since your poor man, ever since he's been going potty as a pancake, she stumbled over the wings that were lying on the floor. What's these things? Lizzie lifted them up and held them for Auntie Doreen to see. They're his wings, she said. Auntie Doreen goggled at her. His wings? She said. Oh, pump. It's worse than I thought. She looked out into the garden and saw Dad out there dangling a worm in front of his face and gasped with fright. What on earth is he doing with that poor worm? Lizzie looked out as well, and they saw the worm disappear into Dad's mouth. It looks like he's eating it, Auntie Doreen. Auntie Doreen retched like she was going to be sick. Jackie, she yelled. Jackie, man, leave it alone. You nit. But Dad picked up another worm and held it before his face. Oh, no. Oh, blitheration. Ugh. She closed her eyes and clutched her belly. What kind of house is this? It's a nice house, of course, said Lizzie. It was once upon a time, said Auntie Doreen. She grabbed Lizzie and hugged her to her massive chest. Oh, you poor child. I am not a poor child, said Lizzie in a muffled voice. Hey, you are. You know you are. Then she pushed Lizzie away and stood up straight. Put them daft wings away, she commanded. Lizzie hung them back off the door. Good. Now it's time to get to work, said Auntie Doreen. There's some suet in that shopping bag. Get it out for us, lass. What that man needs is a dumpling.